Well, good afternoon. I'm joined today by Hamish Renton, who owns and runs HRA Global, a leading marketing consultancy specialising in the food and drink sectors. And we're here to talk about online research. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, Hamish. Before we get into it, I think it's fair to say that even before the COVID pandemic took hold, online research was starting to replace traditional face-to-face focus groups. And this trend has obviously accelerated over the last few months. So we're just going to have a chat about a few of the key issues. Hamish, what would you say in terms of how online can ever actually replace face-to-face? Obviously, there's body language, tonal issues, facial cues, and the like.
I think it's a fabulous tool, but like most tools, they're fantastic at certain tasks and less good at others. You know, try slicing butter with a spoon, and you know what I mean. So online gives you fantastic reach. So when you're putting together a research base of respondents, you're often looking to balance them across gender, class, ethnicity, particularly urban versus, you know, country or town. Doing that in a focus group can be difficult because you have to pick a location. So very often we're up in Manchester, for instance, and do you pick, you know, sort of downtown Manchester, you know, half a mile from Manchester Piccadilly station, or do you pick somewhere, you know, in the leafy suburbs at Alderney Edge, or do you pick a location in one of the sort of urban satellite towns or cities that go around Manchester? Where you pick will determine who you can attract to the focus group. For instance, if you're a single mum in Altrincham, it's really tough for you to get in for 6 o'clock for a focus group by Piccadilly. Conversely, would you be able to, you know, attract a well-heeled office worker out to, you know, one of the less affluent parts of town where they would finish 8:30, 9 o'clock at night? You might have trouble doing that. So online research gets around that by getting everybody to come on at one time and eliminating that sort of access issue, which is pretty key. So it's a very good tool for that, which I call reach as well.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that's much more effective in terms of reach. That makes sense. And what about effectively running qual and quant research? Do you think, obviously, quant's been done online now for quite a while?
Yeah, I mean, quant's fantastic. I mean, it's tougher to do quantified sensory. By that I mean tasting. So if you have, you know, a formulation for a drink, you've probably done 20 different formulations. You might boil that down to a final 3, and then you might want to test for taste, texture, mouthfeel, finish, astringency, all these sort of sensory values. And it's difficult to do that without going face to face, but it can be done. It has to be, they either pick it up from a central location, like a store. So you say, look, go into store, grab this product, take it home, eat it in this environment in this way. But of course, you can't control the eating environment, particularly a product that needs to be prepared, like a ready meal or something. Some of them could cook it differently and you get those inconsistencies. But it can be done, or you can send it through the post as well. So it tends to work better for ambient, i.e. non-chilled, non-frozen room temperature product, and for simpler products. But you can't control the environment that you eat in. And for instance, compare yourself eating a meal, lovely sunlit day, just you eating at the top of a hill. Compare you to eating it on the 2:30 train coming out of Waterloo. Hustle, bustle, noise, they're just two completely different experiences, but the product is the same. So we work hard to get round that, but it can never truly replicate that and control that variable of the environment.
No, I see that. That makes sense. Thank you. Do you think online research will lead to a reduction in I guess cost, and in terms of everything going to the lowest cost denominator, or do you think that's not the case?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an argument for that. You know, we've seen a bit of that in certain digital delivery of services where it's been offshored to lower tax jurisdictions, lower wage cost jurisdictions. But I think with research, it's really tough. You can't compare apples with apples in that sense. So I think for some surveys, perhaps fairly vanilla surveys, certainly for sort of very standard telephone interviewing, which we call CATI, computer assisted telephone interviewing, where you're ringing Mr. Smith and asking what he thinks of his bin collection, and you've got sort of three questions. That's it. No interpretation. Do your bins get emptied? Are the people nice, and are you happy? Then of course you can ship that off. But when there's nuance and shade and interpretation, and you're trying to weigh and sift and get,
there'll still be a role for professionals.
And whether that's done, in Greenland or in Greenwich, the closer it is to the client and the market, usually the better it is.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. And along that same vein of thought, really, how do you think standards can be maintained, and do you think they will be maintained?
I think it's tough. I mean, the gold standard is the Market Research Society. So I'm a member of the Market Research Society on my way to hopefully in 5 or 6 years becoming a fellow. All our folk that we employ are on a pathway to that. So they're either professionally qualified or they're doing so. And I think most agencies in the research world are in the orbit of that. Now, it's not, it's not a cheap outcome. You have to put the hours into CPD, continued personal development every year. So it's quite a cost for the individual to put the legwork in and the company to sponsor. But ultimately, the client gets the reassurance that there's a code of ethics, and particularly at the moment, I mean, a lot of scrutiny around gender and class and ethnicity in research. And being professionally qualified means you sign up to standards.
So it's a bit of a gold standard then.
Yeah. So you're in the clear because you adhere to those standards, and those standards every year nudge up, and that's right, and that's the progress that research makes.
That sounds reassuring. And do you think that more brands will start to undertake research in-house if it's relatively easy compared to outsourcing to a consultancy such as yours? Do you think that's a risk?
Do I think it's a risk? I think for simple research, they've all been, brands have all, the more smarter brands have always done a bit of that, because they're sitting on a gold mine of data from their customer services. Complaints, for instance, in any firm is an absolute veritable gold mine of data. They just need to be smart enough to systematize those complaints, pile them, sift them, prioritize them, unpack them to find out where across the mix the complaints are originating. Are they product complaints, service complaints, quality, price, whatever? So there's a lot of data. And first, I would advise firms to analyze the data they have access to and make meaningful conclusions from that, and then move forward. But I think ultimately, you hire a house builder because it's such a pain to build a house. And market research is very specialist, and people, spend their lives doing it and get good at it. So I think some of it could be done, but ultimately, if you want a right answer, objective answer, dispassionate answer, someone holding a mirror up and telling you uncomfortable truths, what the client does with those.
A good thing to outsource it, isn't it?
Yeah, what the client does with those uncomfortable truths. Do they ditch a few?
Or do they actually reveal them?
Research department to the CEO's office? Well, that's not for me to say. But at least, as a researcher, you've done your jobs and told truth to power.
And I guess it goes back to the days a few years ago when clients were starting to develop their own in-house advertising campaigns, and we saw that wasn't really a trend that took off in a big way. It started, but it didn't really go ahead in a big way, I don't think.
Yeah, I think there's that dynamic that it's incredibly difficult to be objective and analytic about your own stuff, whether it's your advertising, your research, your feedback. It's much easier for me to look at you, Russell, and give you feedback. It would just flow. Can I feedback on myself in that sort of flow state? Can I be objective?
It's always harder, isn't it, to look in the mirror and give yourself feedback?
Yeah, some days I feel I do okay. Other days it's tough, and I'd rather get someone else to feedback. So there is that, and there is the fact that, like it or not, there's a lot of politics in large organisations, and having a third party gets round that as well. So as a researcher, you do have a license to tell that truth.
You're outside of that bubble, aren't you?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, makes sense. So if I may, can I ask you how you got started in research, and how would you recommend that any of our students who want to go into the research profession would get started? You mentioned the MRS, but presumably there's other avenues as well.
Yeah, no. So I guess I'd always been client side. So I started climbing the ladder through a generalist grad scheme, and then eventually specialised in marketing, and then through marketing into general management as MD and running organisations. And through that journey, I was exposed to the dark arts of the focus group. And as the client, it's a lot of fun. Typically, you're behind the glass, and there's some, might be some wine. There might be certainly always Smarties there and
Yes.
Skittles. So you're sitting there watching your customers discussing your products. And it's fascinating. You're having a glass of wine, you're chatting with your other brand managers, and you're writing stuff down furiously.
So if you've got to work, it's not a bad way of doing your work.
It's like a sort of TV show, reality TV show.
Yes.
And there's your products and there's your shoppers. And when they say things about your products, it hurts. You're like, you can't say that about my milkshake. That's not
Take
right.
it personally.
You don't understand it. And you get sort of, and for me, I got quite interested in that. And I used to attend every single focus group I did. And I got some really good friendships with researchers from that.
Yes.
Became kind of more than professional, became friends, which is great. And therefore, it was always really interesting to me to flip around the other side and say, well, actually, I fancy running the group. What skills do I need to run that group, to sift, to do it for other people? So that's the sort of pathway. So I sort of went there as the consumer of research.
And you liked it, and you thought,
I saw good agencies, bad agencies. I kind of thought, you know what? I think I'll create an agency that picks the best of what I've seen and does it differently. And that's
did you find it a lot tougher than you thought? Because it's like anything in life. If you see someone doing something well, then it's easy to be lulled into a false sense of security and think, oh yes, that's not too difficult. Was it that way with you, or was it actually not too difficult when you started undertaking the work yourself?
I think as a moderator, for me, it's like the veritable iceberg. The 10% that's visible to the participants in the focus group or the client, it is built on an edifice of 90% of detailed graft understanding, because you want to sort of effortlessly guide the conversation so it doesn't feel scripted. It just sort of flows like you're in Mrs. Miggins's living room and you're just having a chat. But you're probing, you're going off piece, you're coming back on piece, you're covering topics, you're ticking things off mentally. And you can only really do that if you understand that discussion guide, which is, if you like, your script backwards, and then you remember it all. So I think it's all about the preparation. And then it's about are you interpersonally skilled enough? Can you emotionally intelligent enough?
You've got to be a people person, I guess, at the end of the day, and enjoy relating to people. Almost goes without saying, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And if somebody's giving you like a politician's answer, you just need to dig in and keep digging in until eventually they relent and you can find out what they really think. So, and it's about a group dynamic. You've got 10, 12 people, these days on a Zoom screen, who hasn't been speaking? Who's dominating? Well, let's dial down the dominating people. You don't really want to stick people on mute because that's awkward. You need to say, well, sorry, Floss, could we hear from Susie a little bit, or how about you, Jim?
Yeah, it's funny. I was going to ask you whether you've got any, hints for the students in terms of how you actually run the sessions, whether there's any, anything that particularly comes up in terms of the differences between running sessions online and face-to-face, whether you could maybe elaborate on that.
I think you have more control because there's more of these buttons, but you really don't want to be like some big brother guy muting people and stopping them. You just need to be more, it's more exhausting because the whole of your focus is this camera. Whereas in real life, you're looking left, you're looking right, you're engaging people, that you can use your body language, whereas you can't really see anywhere hit below of here. So it is more focus, and it's really exhausting to do 2 of those a day. And they're about 90 minutes. So that's 3 hours
by the end of it.
It's like, it's like a sort of job interview twice over.
Yes.
And it really is tough. The other thing I would say is, you'll see Alex's grade out there, but we always watch each other as sort of wing people and then critique each other. And we've got our own software running and people can give comments and all the rest of it. So as a moderator, you've got to respond to your group, run your group, check the feedback from the team, see if you've forgotten anything, keep the whole thing moving, conscious of you've only got 80 minutes, people are busy, you've got to cover it in that period. So
it's very challenging, probably more challenging than face-to-face.
Yeah, I think it is more challenging. It's the same challenges, but they're accentuated for part of them, particularly that one of keeping everybody going. Because if somebody switches off, it's hard to see if they're staring intently. Have they got their phone here and just
Yes.
out of camera shot, and they're actually looking at, you know, their mates on Facebook, or are they engaged in the conversation? So it's those sort of dark arts.
Yeah, I guess it's harder to engage them as precisely as it is when you're in someone's living room, for
Yeah.
example, or a research tasting hall.
Yeah, but a good moderator, again, keeps the conversation flowing and draws the more introverts, less vocal folk in, because
Yes.
often they will have the killer insights that you're really looking for. They'll be able to articulate what the group is thinking in like a searing sentence or two, and
Okay.
that's the absolute heart of it.
So is would you say market research consultancy is something that you probably got a vested interest in this answer, but I'll ask you anyway, is something that's best done by smaller, more boutique agencies, or can it be given to the likes of the WPPs and the S4s? Do they handle it well, or does it tend to be a bit of a mess when you get a large conglomerate involved?
Yeah, so I mean, so often a big ad agency will push to do their own market research, and they will say, well, blah, blah, blah. You could go to a proper research company, but we'll do it for half the cost.
Yes.
But it's rather like asking one of your undergrads to mark their own coursework.
Yes.
Hands up who wants to mark their own coursework. Well, we all do.
Yes.
And plot spoiler, we're all going to give ourselves AAA, right? That's how it works. So never let the agency mark its own homework, because as humans, we're not objective. We like to think we are, but we're not. So you got that first point. And then secondly, within research houses, I think the big houses do certain things really well. So they do the cross-geographical stuff. So if you wanted to study in Cairo, you know, Quebec and you know, Petersfield, a big agency is better placed to deliver that. They can maybe give you better consistency across that. But if you're looking for a specialist market, specialist area, specialist, you know, specialist part of research, I would say this is the age of the independents. And then some of those independents are quite big. They don't all have to be SMEs. I mean, we're about 10 people, right? Which I think is a nice size. But the other thing is, as you all know, Russell, with a smaller agency, the people the client sees at the brief are the people who work on the gig.
Absolutely. Whereas with a larger agency,
hoover it up.
They never see the
again. And the intern gets it, and the grad gets it, does the report. The account director changes the name at the bottom and fires it off, you know. So
it's a less personal service.
Yeah, and then when they ask, what did the client mean about that? The client director's going, well, blah, 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 you know. So it's kind of...
haven't got a sense of involvement and personal empathy with the project.
Yeah.
That's great. Any final thoughts before we finish up?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting area for people to look in. I don't think it's an obvious one. A lot of the folk who are in these courses, you know, if you're curious about aspects of psychology, why people think, how people react, I think you have to have that real interest in people to be good at research. Because whether you're looking at a new operating system, a new phone, a food, a cruise ship, whatever you want to research, ultimately the vector of that research are people. And if you're not fundamentally interested, curious about people, and you're a numbers person, or you like colors, or you're overly creative, I don't think you'll be hugely switched on. But if you're interested in people and how they react and why they react and why they think, it's a really interesting part. And as a sort of general marketeer, you need to be, you know, a bit like a sort of a lob shot in tennis. It needs to be in your repertoire. You need to be able to commission research and interpret research as part of your skill set. So think of it as a tennis shot. You need to have it as, you know, as a move and part of your arsenal, whether or not you want to make a career of it.
And I think what I like about it is that the essence of marketing is really fulfilling consumers' needs, and therefore market research gets extremely close to that, doesn't it? That it's much more of a tangible discipline than some other disciplines within marketing. You're getting really to the heart of the issue, which is finding out what the customer wants and then fulfilling that customer's needs to the best of your ability.
Yeah, I think that's right. So which is why in agency land, the market researchers are closest to the planners, because the planners are into proposition, points of difference, etc. So, and I find all that stuff fantastic and fascinating.
Yeah, it is very interesting. I agree.
So get that right, and then the job is to creatively express.
Yeah, the bad bit is when that goes wrong, and then somebody starts off on a campaign and they haven't got the messaging right because they haven't either undertaken research or haven't done it properly, and end up going to the left when they should have gone to the right.
Yeah, so there's a sequence when you fire a gun, isn't it? You sort of, you know, aim it, get it ready, fire it, and the aiming it bit is the market research, really calibrating, understanding, getting what people want, coming up with something, testing it. Right, okay, now we can give it to creative, now we can execute, and all those skills come into play. And the only thing I would say is, if you skip research, you're in danger of that golden phrase, you know, don't do well what you shouldn't do at all. You know, so get your research.
Good summary. Good summary. Well, thank you so much for your time today and for giving us those extremely valuable insights.
Okay,
very
perfect.
enjoyable.
I look forward to speaking to you guys later on.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, Russell.
Goodbye.